SABC?
Yeah.
Started?
Yes.
Okay. We've already done the welcomes, so we'll just get right into it. The Director General will just join us as he comes along. The unofficial acting DGO, DDG of Economic Policy, Mr. Ratsoma, is here. I hope I pronounced it right. So, Minister, I'll hand over to you to read the statement, and then we'll take questions from you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. There have been several economic developments in recent weeks. This statement seeks to provide some context to these developments and inform the public about government interventions to stimulate inclusive growth. On 1 June 2017, Fitch affirmed South Africa's long-term foreign and local currency debt rating at BB+ rating with stable outlook. S&P followed on the 2nd of June and affirmed the long-term foreign currency debt rating at BB+ and long-term local currency debt rating at BBB- with negative outlook. As reported earlier in the week, South Africa's GDP contracted 0.7% between the first quarter of 2017 and the fourth quarter of 2016. This followed a contraction of 0.3% between the fourth and the third quarter of 2016. This trend unfortunately implies that our economy has entered into a recession. In this context, our 27 growth projection of 1.3% may not be realized. This continues the trend of low growth over the last several years, undermining our progress in significantly reducing inequality, unemployment, and poverty, which fundamentally disadvantages a large portion of our population and is the cause of social instability. It therefore requires all social partners to reflect on our progress in bringing about inclusive growth and economic transformation, and to do all that we can and more from our respective positions. Moody's, on the 9th June this year, downgraded South Africa's long-term foreign and local currency debt rating at Baa3 with negative outlook. Moody's rating action concluded the 90-day review process where South Africa's ratings were put on credit watch for possible downgrade. All three ratings agencies have raised similar issues such as the slow pace of growth-enhancing reforms, growing contingent liabilities amid poor governance at key state-owned companies, and political risks, among others. Our sovereign credit rating has huge macroeconomic impact and affects government, business, and ordinary South Africans alike. We are committed to restoring it to a favorable investment grade rating with a positive outlook as quickly as possible. However, we should not lose sight of the fact that we need to address the issues they raise, first and foremost for the good of our country, as well as to advance our national development. We need to want to do the right things for our economy and society, not just because credit ratings agencies are watching. Obviously, these developments are not for. However, it is critical that we are not despondent at this time. I cancelled my trip to Germany this week when I was to attend the G20 Africa Partnership Conference because I felt it critical to ensure that we respond appropriately to the disappointing economic performance of Q1. Government has been deeply engaged with the issue of the recession, analyzing its impact on our growth target and considering an appropriate response. We discussed it in depth in Cabinet last week. President Zuma convened an urgent meeting with several ministers last night where we discussed critical intervention President has stressed the urgency of coordinated response and is convening a full-day meeting in 2 weeks' time of various economic ministers and clusters responsible for key sectors to actions which need to be taken. The President has stressed the urgency of coordinated response and is convening a full-day meeting in 2 weeks' time of various economic ministers and clusters responsible for key sectors to address obstacles delaying the finalization of policy processes and agree urgent timelines. We have also met with the business sector and agree urgent timelines. We have also met with the business sector, having held meetings with Business Unity South Africa, the Black Business Council, the Black Management Forum, the Association of Black Securities and Investment Professionals, and the Black Investment Managers Business Forum. We are meeting the manufacturing circle later today. At all these interactions, we have engaged frankly on the state of the economy, how to get it back on track, and what short and long-term measures must be taken to advance our national development. We are at an inflection point where we can choose to be negative and pessimistic or positive and optimistic. As National Treasury, based on our analysis of the global and domestic economy, we truly believe the glass is half full, not half empty. In this spirit, we would like to convey several key messages today, and I will go on to unpack them. Firstly, we have made real progress, but it will take some time for some of our interventions to impact the real economy and result in improved growth. Second, government is committed to maintaining the fiscal framework announced in the budget and the medium-term strategic framework. The executive finance leadership is also committed to maintaining the stability of National Treasury as an institution. Thirdly, we have heard the call from business and investors that providing policy certainty and stabilizing and revitalizing state-owned companies are among the most important short-term steps we can take to restore confidence. Fourth and finally, inclusive growth and economic transformation are the top priorities of government and are mutually reinforcing. We must and will advance both of these. Ladies and gentlemen, we are seeing some progress despite the contraction over the last 2 quarters. It is worth highlighting that the economy, however low, expanded by 0.6% on a year-on-year comparison between the first quarter of 2016 and the first quarter of 2017. We can still work hard to ensure that this is held up for the rest of the year. The worst contractions were seen in trade, electricity, gas and water, and manufacturing. Weaker trade activity reflects strained domestic demand as consumer and business confidence have not improved and credit extension remains weak and potentially exacerbated by the impact of tighter banking regulations as well as high unemployment. Yet within the cloud of the overall recession, there is a silver lining to be encouraged. Investments, as reflected in gross fixed capital formation, expanded by 1% between the quarters, following a 1.7% expansion between the fourth and the third quarters of 2016. Private sector investment rose for the first time of 2015. Agriculture are among our economy's traditional strengths, and weakness in these sectors in recent years have been among the major drivers of our low growth. Therefore, we are encouraged to see a recovery in agriculture after a long period of drought. The agriculture, forestry and fishing sector grew by 22.2% quarter on quarter. The growth was due mainly to higher production of summer grains, oilseeds and horticulture products as climatic conditions have improved in many parts of the country. Growth in mining and quarrying also rebounded to 12.8% quarter to quarter, driven by higher production of gold and other metal ores, including platinum. The improvement in the mining sector in particular can be partly attributed to improved labor relations, which has been one of the most successful outcomes of government's intense engagement with the social partners over the last 2 years. Other successful government interventions include having moved from electricity shortage to surplus and launching Invest South Africa, making it easy to open a business and invest in South Africa. These interventions have resolved issues which, until very recently, have been seen as major binding constraints on growth. The rebound, however, will not be immediate. Production capacity which was lost due to electricity unavailability or bitter labor disagreements will take time to be reconstituted. The low growth environment also reflects the extent of low business and consumer confidence. Growth and confidence are mutually reinforcing. We cannot say how much growth can be restored if all social partners begin to talk up what is working in the economy, but we know for sure that fixating on our challenges will not help us. So we call on everyone in South Africa, business and all social partners, across all political affiliations, to focus on working together to drive inclusive growth. Our analysis of the economy in Q1 indicates several trends which require focus going forward. First, we need to leverage on improved conditions in agriculture to advance agro-processing and increase support for small and large-scale farmers. Second, finalization of key policy in mining is critical to unlock investment and leverage on improved commodity prices and favorable exchange rate effects. Thirdly, we need speedily to finalize review of incentives in the manufacturing sector, the better to expose areas of slack and low value for our resources, and scale up support for industries with the largest potential. We will explore funding for a new economic competitiveness support package. The DTI's agro-processing support scheme is a welcome development. It is critical that we build on our strength in agriculture by capturing more of the value chain through processing. Work is underway between the National Treasury and the Department of Small Business Development to explore additional mechanisms to support small businesses. This has become an urgent matter. Fourthly, some business stakeholders are complaining about tightness in the credit market. We will engage the financial sector and all other stakeholders for a better understanding of possible interventions within our regulatory framework. This is critical for supporting business investment and general credit to households. Over the last 2.5 months, the Deputy Minister and I have had numerous candid discussions with domestic and global investors, as well as the credit ratings agencies. One of the major worries that has been consistently raised is whether we are committed to maintaining the fiscal framework set in the medium-term strategic framework in the 2017 budget. We continue to reiterate that the fiscal framework is the policy of the government. We support it, we are bound to it, we will implement it. South Africa has a world-class, transparent and predictable budgeting process. Not only myself and the Deputy Minister, but Cabinet and the ruling party have committed to implementing it as outlined. In this regard, we hope that these worries will diminish quickly as we approach the medium-term budget statement in October. A related concern was around the stability and leadership of National Treasury, following the departure of former Director General Lungisa Fuzile. We promised to quickly appoint a capable leader for Treasury who could ensure stability and continuity. We are pleased to report that we have delivered on that promise with the appointment of our new Director General Dondo Mukhajane last week. He has a wealth of experience, having spent the better part of 18 years at National Treasury, while bringing laudable energy and passion to the role. He is well trusted in the markets and he inspires confidence. We have the utmost confidence that he will serve the institution and the country well going forward. We will give him a better welcome internally in the coming days. Ladies and gentlemen, in our stakeholder engagements, one of the key messages we have heard is that the two most important things government can do in the short term is to provide policy certainty and to stabilize and revitalize our state-owned companies. Cabinet has resolved that we need to conclude some unfinished policy discussions and execute with speed to unlock investment which will spur growth, job creation, and economic transformation. We need to create policy certainty and fast-track the Mining Charter and the Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act, the rollout of broadband or high-speed internet to all communities, allocation of telecommunication spectrum, conclusion of independent power producer agreements, land and agrarian reform, finalizing processes to improve governance and financial strength of state-owned companies. For its part, the ANC also stressed on Saturday that it will contribute to policy certainty through its policy and national conferences in June and December respectively, which will outline its policies for the next 5 years. With respect to state-owned companies, National Treasury is the shareholder representative for South African Airways. We are also committed to strengthening the board by filling the 2 existing vacancies, including by appointing a person with deep aviation experience and expertise. As you know, Cabinet appointed the board chair for a final term. At the upcoming AGM, we will attend to the matter of appointing her successor. We will be recommending a chief executive to Cabinet over the coming weeks. In the coming weeks, one of the major concerns for all economic stakeholders has been Eskom. We are confident that Minister Brown will fill vacancies in the board and executive leadership of Eskom with leaders who will instill confidence. We look forward to further positive developments there. With regard to all of these areas, at the meeting I referred to, that the President has convened in 2 weeks' time, we will be thrashing out detail as to the implementation plan as well as the timelines. That action plan will be an action plan in terms of which our actions as government in relation to these matters will be measured. In our engagements with business, particularly representatives of black business, it became clear that it would be a mistake to react to the recession by focusing only on the growth of established business and letting economic transformation fall by the wayside. We need to advance inclusive growth and economic transformation. The NDP argues that we need both. You cannot do one without the other. They are mutually reinforcing. It is time that individuals and groups who supported the NDP when we adopted it, who say now that they support it, stop supporting only the parts of it which are convenient to them. Yes, we want the economy to grow. We want big businesses to expand. We want small businesses to expand. We want new businesses to start and expand. And we also want industries to transform, to include black people and women, as well as young people, in ownership, in top management, in professional work. It is not optional or a nice to have. It is a core aspect of our nation's development. We need both. Wealth creation by the previously disadvantaged in South Africa will have more of an impact than the currently wealthy getting 5% wealthier. We want to see our top listed companies record double-digit annual revenue growth. We would also like to see black-owned businesses who currently have single-digit market share in industries like financial services auditing, construction double their market share. That will create new wealth and new economic players. Accordingly, we have heard the call from black business to be more proactive. There are at least 3 measures the finance family will take in this regard. We will work with the financial services sector and our colleagues at DTI to adopt and implement a new financial services charter. ABSIP has stressed the Association of Black Securities and Investment Professionals, ABSIP, has stressed that the Black Business Growth Fund proposed in the charter, with a potential of 100 billion rand fund dedicated to funding black businesses, could be a potential game changer. We must do all within our power to bring bold initiatives like this to fruition. We will fast-track public consultation and finalization of the public procurement bill. It must enable a modernized public procurement regime, which will have economic transformation as its core mandate, and maximize the developmental impact of the more than 500 billion rand government entities spend every year procuring goods and services, by targeting and increasing access to black, women and youth-owned businesses, township entrepreneurs and others. Economic transformation must not be an afterthought, but at the center of procurement strategy, reporting, and performance management. We will develop proposals to increase the amount of assets the Public Investment Corporation and other state entities gives to black asset managers to manage. Asset managers play a major role in the economy, in influencing corporate strategy, the character and pace of transformation, as well as the scale and nature of investments, and framing the discussion, the narrative about economic growth and transformation in the country. We must grow the share of assets under management of black fund managers with proven track record, skill, and experience. We are all frustrated by the lack of growth, which, if sustained, will compromise our ability to reduce unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The NDP set our nation the task of driving inclusive growth and economic transformation as 2 necessary, mutually reinforcing and overarching objectives which enable us to resolve our national challenges. Nowhere in the NDP does it say it would be easy. Achieving Vision 2030 requires all of us to find common cause and ask ourselves how we can contribute as government, as business, as labor, as civil society to inclusive growth and economic transformation. Let us remain optimistic about the possibilities of South Africa and work together to realize a better future for all. And I thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and welcome, DG. I'm sure you guys are quite familiar with the drill, so I'll just take some questions from the floor. Please just state which media house you come from and ask your questions. So I'll start at the back.
Thank you. It's Mariam Issa from FinWeek. My question is to the Minister. The news that, or the reiteration that the fiscal framework will be maintained is obviously very welcome to investors. However, it's very clear that growth this year is probably going to be half of what was forecast by the Treasury in the budget. Now, how do you, with tax revenues so much less than expected, how are you going to meet the targets of the budget deficit and the debt ratio? Are you going to shift money around? How are you going to handle it?
Thank you. Richard.
Hi, it's Rich Poplak from Daily Maverick. This is for the Minister. It's a little bit surreal thinking of the President calling an urgent meeting of the Cabinet to discuss fiscal matters at this stage, given that so many of these troubles have occurred under his watch. Can you take us inside that meeting, please, and speak about what was discussed and whether you yourself were very frank with the president as to what the problems, structural and otherwise, are right now?
Thank you, Richard. Take the business day in front of you.
Hi, Minister. It's Ethan from Business Day. I just wanted to check, given the policy announcement from the news this morning about the mining charter, what is the impact on the interventions going forward, and what will be the impact on economic growth for the sector?
All right, I'll come back for more questions. That'll be a note to you and others. Minister, we can take those and come back for more.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the questions. Quite clearly, at the medium-term budget policy statement, we will announce. First, let me say, it's evident that the medium-term budget policy statement is going to be watched very carefully for the announcements we will make with regard to the choices we are making, both in terms of the policy as well as therefore how we are going to allocate the resources given the tight environment in which we are. We do believe that there is a number of hard decisions that need to be made. The fact of the matter is that we are in a difficult economic situation, and nobody must be in doubt about that. We are going to have to take hard decisions which may require that we look at the possibilities of further cuts in terms of government programs and spending in a manner that is going to reduce wastage but make financing, make money available for social expenditure as well as economic investments. So we will have to make difficult decisions. I think what also must be borne in mind is that it's a difficult year, given that it's also the year for the public sector wage negotiations. We will have to find a way to keep the wage bill within limit, taking into account the difficulties that we are in. So we are going to be doing a lot of work to determine what do we do with the budget, how can we reprioritize, where can we get money, what programs need to be deprioritized, so that we place ourselves at a position where we can have the resources we need in order to meet our fiscal framework. But we also need to bear in mind that what makes this a difficult environment is that if you look at the first quarter results, government expenditure has dropped. Credit extension is lower, is weak. And so the very fact that government is not employing more people, we have had to shed jobs by cutting down the amounts of the size of the public service, not filling certain vacancies and leaving them leaving others vacant for longer, has had an impact on incomes, on the tax revenues, on disposable incomes, and the spend by households, by individuals, which also have contributed to reducing household consumption. So we must try to ensure that we don't get trapped there. And so the reallocation, the reprioritization is going to be a very difficult, but it's a necessary activity that we need to undertake. I think given the situation in which we are, we will look at where can we get money. We will look at, therefore, what are the programs we need to reprioritize, and how do we reallocate so that we can meet our growth targets, and so that we can meet our fiscal framework targets. The meeting with the president was a frank meeting. I think not only with the president, but our presentations in cabinet, even last week, was extremely candid about the risks that we are facing. And what I've just said now is precisely what I said in cabinet, and precisely what we were discussing yesterday. I think that's why the meeting was convened yesterday, and we're having another one. The purpose of the meeting in 2 weeks' time, or following from last night's meeting, is to emerge with an action plan. An action plan that deals with all the areas that relate to boosting business confidence, boosting consumer confidence, implementing structural reforms, implementing the programs that, because if you look at whether it's the mining programs or broadband or telecommunications, land reform programs and others, you are not talking about new policies to be introduced. You're talking about many policies which are already there, but there is no speed in implementing them. There is no sense of urgency, and there is no implementation taking place which would provide certainty and clarity as to the timelines and how those policies are going to be implemented. What the president then asked the ministers, the relevant sector ministers, to do is to put in place an action plan that we will then meet and compile into a composite action plan with regard to all of those issues, and that will be made public so that the investors, business, and everybody else, including ratings agencies, can hold us to account in terms of our implementation of these programs and compliance with the timelines that we have set ourselves. It is quite an important intervention, because if we don't react to this situation as speedily and as timeously as we should, we will find the economy getting into deeper trouble. At the present moment, there are opportunities for us to recover from this situation, which is precisely why we are saying to South Africans, yes, we are in a difficult situation, but do not become despondent, remain optimistic. All the necessary interventions must and will be made in order to turn the economy around and put it on a positive growth trajectory. But it's going to be important that all the role players, including business, labor, and civil society, must come to the party with regards to what they will do to get the economy out of the present situation. It impacts on individuals, it impacts on citizens, and so we all should focus singularly on reigniting growth in the economy and ensuring transformation at the same time. The release of the mining charter, I think, is a welcome step, but we note that it already has consequences. There is already a reaction in the markets. The mining stock has dropped, and a number of other actions and concerns are out there. We do express the wish of the Treasury that the Minister of Mineral Resources will engage as a matter of urgency with the sector, the unions and the mining companies, in order to ensure that we can address the concerns and at the same time continue to pursue the goals of transformation. The mining sector has contributed to, even though we performed weakly in the first quarter, but the mining sector as well as agriculture contributed positively. Had all other sectors performed almost as well as the mining and agricultural sector, we would be having a different conversation now. And so we need to take that into cognizance and ensure that we do not have consequences that are going to further weaken the economy. It's important that the sectors responsible should have a robust conversation and find one another. The National Treasury is prepared to participate in those conversations because we are looking not only at sectoral interests, we are looking at the interests of the economy as a whole. And we would want to see every sector performing well. And so we are interested parties in this regard. We are ready to engage with all the sectors to facilitate discussions and ensure that we can find one another and meet the objectives of the sector, which is to continue to grow investments, grow the jobs, grow transformation, and in the course of that, grow the economy as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I'll start with Arabile and then I'll work my way up.
Good afternoon, Arabile Kumete, Bloomberg News. Minister, you would have noted with all the downgrades that have happened that one of the key issues has been political uncertainty. How then do you plan on bettering South Africa's growth and delivering on fiscal consolidation despite all the political noise? So how do you plan to remove that noise in order to achieve the targets you've held out?
Federal.
Yeah, Minister John Fraser, ZA Confidential. Being neither black nor a woman nor that young anymore, you can understand I was a little bit depressed by some of what you were saying. But I just wondered if I could ask you a few targeted questions on incentives. You said you plan to speedily review or speed up the review of the incentives. Is there a deadline for this? Because it's been going on for a while. And secondly, you said you'll explore funding for a new economic competitiveness support package. Is that a follow-up to MSET, or is it looking at something different, please?
I'll take Collie behind you, then I'll move across.
Thank you very much. Colin Gambi from ENCA. Minister, on the question of political uncertainty being a factor in this economy, how do you respond to skeptics who say things are unlikely to change and you and your deputy minister are unlikely to inspire that confidence given the many revelations that the country continues to hear stemming from your so-called Gupta leaks? Also, when it comes to the stabilization of state-owned entities, it is something, as you mentioned as well, that has been mentioned by the ratings agencies. Would you agree that the country is far from achieving the stabilization of SOEs given the questionable appointments in the boards of these SOEs? For example, if I could ask one pointed question, is Mr. Rajesh Naitani still a board member of SA Express, and does he continue to shuttle between South Africa and India? Thanks, that's it for now.
Thanks, Collie.
Good day, Minister. Cai Chun from China Economic Daily. Minister, can you please brief us of some of the most recent developments of the BRICS mechanism? I mean, how far are we with the African branch of the NDB, and have you started the BRICS rating agency? And since China is hosting the BRICS summit this year, September, there are calls that the BRICS countries should have greater integration in terms of trade and investment. How does South Africa respond to that? Thank you.
Minister, for
enhancing trade and investment between BRICS countries.
I have noted you.
Increase trade
Thanks,
between BRICS countries.
From Reuters News. I wanted to ask, is the Minister concerned or worried about the increasing reluctance of local investors to purchase government bonds and state-owned entity bonds? And if he is, what plans does the Treasury have to perhaps deal with a funding shortfall there? Thanks.
Minister, I think that's a good basket for now, and then we'll come back for another round.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. South Africa is a political democracy. We've got a pluralistic society. So political noise will forever be there. Political instability, it actually, if you look at it, is not instability at all. It's political contestation. I think political instability tends to exaggerate the political contestation that we are having. There were years when we had political instability, when you had protests for municipal services, when recurring labor disputes and instability at the workplace, when you had a very fractious relationship between labor and employers. We've moved away from that, and a lot of the political contestation we're having at the present moment is in terms of statements, in terms of yes, there are a few matches now and again. It's in terms of court challenges, which actually emphasize the fact that the overwhelming majority of South Africans view our constitutional democracy in positive light and utilize the institutions available within the democratic state to express their opinions, the debates in parliament and elsewhere. So it's actually something quite good. Even within intra-party political contestations, the intra-party political contestations within various political organizations have not spilled out into something unmanageable and uncontrollable, as you would observe perhaps in other countries further from here. So we are pretty much okay, I think. What is important is that the National Treasury, amidst all that noise, must remain alert, robust, shielded from the noise, so that our professionals, our officials can continue doing their work. I think that the steps we are taking, both to appoint a new Director General within a period of 30 days of the resignation of the previous Director General, it was actually 3 weeks after the resignation of the previous Director General, and the fact that the other top management positions, except the one vacated by Dondo here, have all been advertised, short lists have been prepared, we should go ahead with the processes of interviews. All of that affirms that we are very eager to stabilize the institution at top leadership level, so that this leadership can carry on with the task of managing our fiscals, whilst we at the political executive level also carry on with our work of shielding them from the noise and at the same time providing them leadership in a manner that ensures that the country continues to implement and fulfill its fiscal policy. So we believe that all of this noise, the political environment in South Africa is the better for us than if we had, if we didn't have a pluralistic democracy. Pluralistic democracies come with these instances. There are moments when the noise is too loud. There were moments when it wasn't this loud. And I think we are going through phases all the time as we are maturing. And what we need is to be able, is to mature as the political establishment with the maturing democracy, and in the course of that, be able to shield the administration and our institutions from the noise and the turbulences from time to time, so that the institutions remain robust, solid and stable, able to do their work whilst all of the noise is taking place outside. And that's why it was so important for us, as a demonstration of our commitment, to appoint a Director General who is well known, well experienced, well trusted, and who is therefore going to be able to do the work expected of him. The skeptics, if I may just deal with the related questions. I think the skeptics, again, we are a democracy. It's okay for people to be skeptical of all political leadership. It wouldn't be the first in South Africa, and surely wouldn't be the last. We are not unique in that situation. I think it's important that as a democracy we understand that there are those who will forever remain skeptical. And at times it's not because they don't support you or don't trust you. They are skeptical because they think they want to see your actions speak for you rather than what you say. And that's why from the very outset, on the 1st of April this year, I made the statement that judge us on our actions, not just our words or what you hear of us outside the work environment. Judge us on our actions and use our actions as that judgment. And I think we've appointed a new Director General. We had made that commitment. We have been engaging with business. We have had no less than 3 meetings with BUSA, 4 meetings with BBC. We've met various organizations. We've been engaging with the ratings agencies. We have ensured at all times that we stick to our message, both in public and private, that we will maintain the fiscal framework that we had agreed to. We have been very firm in saying to colleagues, when they have made statements we were not happy with, that please keep quiet and allow us to comment, to be the only ones who comment on these issues. And they have respected that. The issues that people may be raising within political organizations are different. But at the level of government, people have respected the stances we have taken, and in actual fact have gone on to repeat the messages that we are making. And that is quite important, because it says that you are not only being respected as Treasury, colleagues are understanding your message, that at this environment, in this environment, it's important for everybody to stick to message and ensure that we can implement the programs that we need to implement. We had made a commitment that we are going to pay close attention to South African Airways and other entities within our portfolio, and will engage with colleagues on the entities in their own portfolios. We have been steadfast in doing that. We have been unmoved. I mean, we have been unyielding in terms of our engagement on the issues which we regard as matters of principle. So if people are skeptical, it's okay. It really doesn't concern us. And I think with regard to other issues, the public protector is taking the matter up. I think it's very good. We would hope that the issues that she's going to investigate will be expedited, so that we can all get down to the business of focusing on our work, and not be distracted by issues that are outside. And the gentleman in question, I removed him from the board of SAA in 2013 or 2014, I cannot remember exactly, but I removed him when I realized that he didn't possess the skills that we thought he would possess in bringing on board a BRICS experience, particularly in terms of aviation. When we realized that he didn't have those skills, I removed him from the board of South African Airways, so he's no longer there. But we are discussing within the SOC Reform Committee the principles of the appointment of the boards. It's one of the issues that are going to be finalized at our meeting in 2 weeks' time, because that will provide clarity as to how members of boards are selected. If you remember, at Public Enterprises in 2013 or 2012, we decided to issue a public call on people to nominate those whom they consider have valuable skills in the areas of the portfolio that we were managing, in order to establish a database, so that when you establish a board, you look at the database available and you can use the people available at that database. That also has been advertised in City Press for people with skills, in order to create a much broader pool. So there is greater transparency with experience of with regard to the appointment of boards, and I think it's going to assist to ensure that we finally settle this issue. But going further, when boards are being appointed, the departments first look at the skills matrix required for that particular board, and once they have done so, they then look at pools of people who can be drawn in for those boards to fulfill the skills matrix. So it is quite a rigorous process that is undertaken by departments. By the time the department brings recommendations to the minister, ministers will not review or reject the recommendations that have been brought before them by the boards. I think by the department. The board that is appointed differently is, for example, the board of SABC, because it is appointed through a public interview process undertaken by the National Assembly, as well as the board of the National Youth Development Agency. So those are appointed differently, but all others, there is a rigorous process undertaken before the final nominations take place. With regard to BRICS, the process of appointing the head of the Africa Regional Center is now close to completion. The interviews have been done. Government has agreed. We support the candidates. The new development bank must now decide who they are appointing and advise us accordingly. The home country agreement has been agreed, both between us as the country and the new development bank, and within ourselves as the country. And so we have moved a major step forward. We do have a temporary domicile for the Africa Regional Center. We still have to finalize the permanent domicile, where exactly it's going to be, whether in Midrand or at another location in Gauteng. So that is going to be finalized, because it's a more of a long-term issue. It will require construction and other things within the specifications of the new development bank. But the temporary domicile was identified once we finalized the appointment of the head of the Africa Regional Center, as well as a sign-off on the home country agreement. We will be good to go to launch the center and to start looking at the South African project pipeline that will be funded through the new development bank. So we've made major milestones in that regard, and we should be able to launch the center and start working. We are concerned about the state-owned company auctions that have taken place recently. We are talking to the banks and fund managers, and we have heard them. I think the issues that I raised in the statement are a response to the matters which the fund managers have been raising. It's not only, their concerns are not only about the level of growth in the economy, although that is the most important concern. But when it comes to buying bonds, purchasing bonds of state-owned companies, there are various concerns. They relate to the strength of governance, the strength of the balance sheets of state-owned companies, the rising contingent liabilities, and we are addressing those issues both internally within government as well as between ourselves and relevant fund managers, and we hope we are going to turn that situation around so that we are able to raise the resources we require for infrastructure rollout. I think the importance of infrastructure rollout and capital investments in the environment of an economy that has slowed down significantly cannot be overemphasized, because it serves as a stimulus, a counter-cyclical investment program. So we need to ensure that state-owned companies are able to raise the bonds they require in order to finance the capital investments. And so government is not staying out of that fray. We are very much involved, discussing with them in order to address the issues which have been raised with us. I think there's a question 9. Okay.
The question on MSEP and the economic support program.
Don't they use the other mic? Yeah, just press the button on the bottom here.
There we go. On the economic competitive support program, it is coming to an end in a year or so. And of course, the MSEP, which is the manufacturing arm of it, is also, I suppose, included in the broader package. So the incentive, which is where it connects, so the incentive review is linked to the fact that these programs will be coming to an end in the next year or so. But before we have to do any extensions, we want to get a better understanding of where we think we got much better value for the amount of money that has been spent. And given that the fiscus is so constrained, so that exercise is going to be very helpful in moving resources, if we ought to, from programs that have underperformed to programs where we think we got much higher multiplier value for growth and employment. So it is within that context.
Sorry, is there a date for this review?
Well, I suppose it is very much aligned to the current program expiring. So the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation is running the process. I mean, they've had to source aspects to assist in that process. So the idea is, of course, to complete before the program comes to expiry. So I'm hoping, in fact, I think they've made quite substantial progress in that. And in the next year or so, we may be able to have a good understanding of where to next.
And this is not the only review that we're doing. If you remember, we did a whole lot of reviews, public expenditure reviews, and you should understand this in the context of what Minister has been saying, trying to understand where our spend is, and also trying to make sure that we are spending government resources in the right way. Because in any review, whether it's this one that you're asking about, will give us answers in 3 ways. It will answer question number 1, is it effective? Is it in such a way that we should be actually expanding the program because there's multiplier effect, or we should or should we be closing it down? So this and many other 25 reviews that we did in the last year or so are pointing us in the right direction to be able to know whether we want to expand the program, stop the program, or remodify the program in order for it to have maximum impact in terms of resources that we've allocated.
One question from the 2, actually. 1, 2.
Sorry, dear. Minister, you may have to allocate more resources to
Yeah.
CIS.
That's better.
Deputy Minister's thing is not working.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think I want to attend to the question of trying to enhance more trade between the BRICS countries. Although the relationship between the BRICS countries started being political, but we have always recognized the fact that by and large it should be economic relationship. But it's not just about BRICS, it's about also intra-African trade. That the trade between and amongst African countries, especially in the region, is very low. It's about 15% of our total trade, whereas if you look at the European Union, it's about 30%. So there are issues, and we must address those issues. If there are legislative issues that are harboring more enhanced trade amongst and between the countries, we are attending to those things. For instance, if you take India is growing at about 7% rate, and we think that as a BRICS partner, we should be able to tap into that growth. But not just about trade, but as to how they managed to get the 7% growth under these conditions. One of the things that happened, I was attending the African Development Bank Summit in India. Prime Minister Modi said one of the things that we should really be looking at is the question of agriculture, which has really helped India. So we are committed into looking at all those barriers, as you know, that the BRICS countries, especially India and China, has performed very well as far as economic growth is concerned. But let me deal with an issue which Claudia you have raised. I would have preferred that you'd been more specific, but you know that you have had a very detailed interview with Nkanyis, although you decided to just take a little bit of it. By the way, he's still looking for it. If you could give him the whole interview. But let me talk about PRASA. I was the PRASA chairman for 6 years and the PRASA board member for 4 years. So for 10 years I was at PRASA. So I think it's very important that I must start by paying tribute to those men and women who spared neither strength nor effort in ensuring that we provide decent service to our people. You know, I've always told the board throughout my entire stay there that in public service, don't expect thank you. The fact that you bought new trains, nobody's going to talk about that. The fact that you signaling in Gauteng, signaling in the Western Cape, signaling in KZN, nobody will talk about that. So there'll be all types of allegations. But I think it's important in a democratic state like ours that when there are investigations or allegations that are being made, they should be taken to the law enforcement agencies and the public protector, for those that belong to the public protector. Let me say in front of you and in front of South Africans that my entire life, which is 35 years of my entire life, has been dedicated to public service. And that's what I've done at a very early stage. I've been out of PRASA for about 3 years, and it just surprised me that 3 years after I'd left PRASA, such vitriolic attack on my persona and the persona of my board and those men and women was leveled against me. But obviously, it's very easy to make all types of allegations, to throw mud and think that some of it is going to stick. But I'll subject myself to the law enforcement agencies. I'll subject myself to the public protector. Let me say here and now that I'm not guilty of anything. I'm not guilty of conflict of interest. I'm not guilty of fraud. I'm not guilty of anything. At all the times when I was at PRASA, I performed with that team my duties, fiduciary responsibilities to the best of my ability. Perhaps to talk about that at PRASA, what is the responsibility of the board? The board must set policies, amongst others, set strategy, checks and balances in the system so that if there's somebody who's doing something wrong, you're able to detect it. But having said that, throughout the 10 years that I was at PRASA, the Auditor General audited us, and all those years they gave us a clean report. And all those years, we've got internal auditing, which was performed, amongst others, by companies from outside the company, not only in internal people, amongst them Manasseh once performed internal auditing for us. Deloitte once performed internal auditing. Those things are supposed to give the board assurances. There's what you call delegation of authority, especially when it comes to tenders and procurement. Just different levels of processes that you go through. There's what you call a bid evaluation committee in PRASA. There's adjudication committee in PRASA. That's even before you come to the board. Those are management committees which look at the compliance of the tender of the tender and procurement at PRASA as we ask for goods and services. And then it's only after adjudication committee that you then go to what we call finance, capital, investment, and procurement committee, which is the subcommittee of the board. That subcommittee of the board looks at everything, looks at the compliance, and you put there people who understand what is happening, who are members of the board. The chairman doesn't sit on that committee. So things will only come to the board once they are being recommended to the board by the finance, capital, investment committee. So it just surprises me then when there are people who are claiming that the chairman has been charged for having done anything wrong. The chairman didn't have any particular delegations at PRASA. I was part of the board. I was leading that board, and that. Let me just again assure you and guarantee you that with the information that was given to that board, I can assure you that if we were to present it in front of us today, we'll take the same decisions that we took that time. So nothing untoward about the things that we did. I haven't seen anything again, perhaps somewhere there, where the chairman has been accused of having done anything wrong. So I reserve my rights as far as some allegations that I've seen being leveled against myself. But what I think is important, ladies and gentlemen, is that we should be careful of the allegations where people just throw things and they don't go to court and present those things. Because I can accuse you, all of you, of anything, but I must prove what I'm saying. So I'm looking forward to cooperating with anybody and everybody who would like to investigate or want to question me on any matter that when I was PRASA, it's alleged that I did. As far as I'm concerned, I've had other responsibilities before in government, and I've never been found of having acted in a manner which prejudices the state or the company that I was involved in. But having said that, I was part of a team, and I served under about 3 different ministers at Department of Transport, and at all the times we accounted to that minister. As things stand now, with all these noises that are there, I think we'll continue doing what we can do best, what I've always done with the team that is led by Minister Madusi, to serve the people of South Africa to the best of my ability. And that's the oath that I took on the 31st of March when I was sworn in as a Deputy Minister of Finance. I'm here not for any personal gain, but to serve the people of South Africa.
Just for clarity, Deputy Minister, you're not saying you're 35 years old. You're saying you've served government for.
I'm 35.
We'll take the last round. So.
Yeah, so it's in Cape Town.
Yeah, no, I'm including you in that last round. But by the look of hands, yeah, I think we might have to have 2 last rounds. So let's start with Warren here, and then we'll go.
Good afternoon, Minister. Just wanted to talk about.
Introduce yourself, sorry, just because I know you.
Warren Thompson from Moneywork. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted, Minister Gigaba, just wanted to talk about the SOEs, and I'll throw SABC into that. From where I sit, it looks like a very difficult position to manage. As I understand it, and obviously just correct me here, in terms of SOEs, including the SABC that might need money, you've got certainly SAA and the SABC, which probably immediately require funding. And I wanted to just understand how that would, what the current plan is at the moment, because we did see the GEPF coming out saying that they would not be happy the gap there for SABC and SAA. And then just a little bit further down the road, the real big one's obviously Eskom. You've got a situation where Eskom is returning to the regulator to seek very high increases in the cost of electricity. So if those are successful, that obviously drastically hampers the country's competitiveness, certainly from a manufacturing point of view. And if they don't get those increases, I would probably argue that either by way of contingent liability or another bailout, they're going to require money from the fiscus again. So could you just map out what the thinking is around Eskom from that balance sheet point of view, and whether you have considered extending the contingent liabilities, which in turn might have an adverse effect on our credit rating? Thank you.
Yeah, tough question, Warren. I just want to take a few new hands first. Sir.
Lesser Malopna from City Press. My question is quite simple. Considering that previous ministers have also said they will allocate more resources, they'll tell PIC to allocate more resources to the black asset managers. You say you're developing a proposal. When are you going to be submitting that proposal to the PIC? And what percentage will you be proposing to them to allocate to black asset managers? Because you face the same problems where black managers have been saying the same things for a couple of years throughout the different ministers. Nothing has changed. And there's also an issue where when you say with proven track records and experience, black asset managers are very few and they don't have funds to manage. So what kind of track record will you be looking for in your proposal?
Thank you, sir. Can I take Anton, because he hasn't asked? Sam, you've dropped your hand. I'll take it to your covered. So I'll take Anton, and then I'll go to Cape Town, and then probably we'll see what we can do for you after that. So let me take Anton.
Good afternoon, Minister Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM. My question is about the planned meeting in 2 weeks' time with the ministers in the economic cluster to address the obstacles about policy implementation. I'm puzzled about this meeting. You have bi-weekly cabinet meetings. You have this special meeting now. According to me, that's part of the job description of ministers to get these obstacles out of the way and address these obstacles, these challenges. What is this meeting going to be? How is this meeting going to be any different from any other ministerial cabinet meeting? How will you address these challenges differently at this meeting, apart from, or if you look at the cabinet meetings? I mean, for me, it's just more of the same. Thank you.
Don't answer your own question, Anton. Can we go to Cape Town and check how many hands are there?
We have one for now. Paul?
Good afternoon, Minister. Paul Decchiata from Bloomberg. This afternoon, the National Assembly will be voting on the Twin Peaks legislation, the Financial Sector Regulation Bill. Could you just say how soon, should they pass the bill, how soon you expect it to be enacted? And is National Treasury ready for the regulations on this bill? And then thirdly, do you think it will bolster confidence in the financial services sector and the economy? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Are we covered in Cape Town?
Yes, back to you.
Okay. I want to make this the last round, Minister. So if the repeat offenders can just ask their question. No, so we'll start at the back and then we'll come to Kelly.
Thank you. This is very quick. In fiscal consolidation, there's the topic of tax increases. The budget in February penciled more in for the coming year. People are saying that with the way the economy is going now, further tax hikes are really going to kill the economy. Are you going to do anything to mitigate that? Are you going to go ahead, or are you going to even raise the amount of tax increase allocation to meet your targets?
Thank you very much. Couple of questions, ministers. Thank you, if you could indulge me. Deputy Minister, if I could start with you. It would strike me as odd if you probably not going to say you're going to sue. So do you intend pursuing any charges against anyone who's making these allegations against you? And second to that, have the Hawks been in touch with you at all? Have you received any questions? And third of all, and lastly for you, there does seem to be some intimation that National Treasury has actually indicated that you be charged criminally. Have you heard wind of this, and what would be your reaction to this, in particular given that I think Mr. Molefe, Popo Molefe, the current chair at PRASA, has actually said what went on during your tenure at PRASA was actually, it makes the whole arms deal issue really a drop in the ocean. Minister Gigaba, if we go with your theme of saying, please judge us by our record, during your tenure, at both public enterprises and at Home Affairs, it would appear here, Minister, that the Guptas indeed benefited hugely. Now, is it still your statement that you have done no wrong? And in addition to that, how do South Africans then trust that in your current position, you are not doing the bidding of this family if later you're going to come back and say, the people that I appoint to these positions, I have no way of telling what they're going to do once they're in those positions? Okay. And just lastly, if you could tell us whether indeed a record was tabled in Parliament when the Guptas were naturalized in the country. There seems to be no record there that you would have had to table that particular record in Parliament, given that they were naturalized under very pressing circumstances, if I could put it that way. Thanks.
Well, for your last question, I've indulged you, but if I could just say that that is a question that the DG of Home Affairs is willing to answer. I've spoken to him about it, so I would ask that question, which has an administrative aspect to it, that you directed at them. But Minister, there's a handful of questions. I'll leave it to you.
The DG wants to answer something.
Okay. Yeah. Let me start with the personal one. About the allegations leveled against me, I think for now, let me just tell you that I reject them with the contempt they deserve, irrespective of the source that it comes from. It baffles me that I've been out of PRASA, and Popo has been there for the past 3 years, and on his last days he comes and makes such big allegations. As I said in one of my interviews, that Popo is a person that I spend time with, who am a phone call away. He has never given me a shout. The first time he interacts with me, I spend time with this man in prison. The first time he interacts with me through media. So I'm just saying, as far as it is concerned, I reserve my rights, and I don't know why after 3 years it's only then that this is the things went wrong at PRASA. Hawks approaching me, no. That's why I said I'll be very much willing to engage with them. But let me stress this one, that the chairman at PRASA didn't have any particular delegations to the chairman, right? There were not delegations to the chairman. There are delegations to the board that the chairman led. And that board, amongst others, had people from Department of Transport, had people from Department of National Treasury. They had SALGA people, and then a very serious men and women who took their work very, very seriously. So that's the board that I led, which I'm very proud of, because there are things that I can point at that was delivered. Others, they must still show me what they did in their entire 3 years that they were there. If I were to pick up on that one, this chairman was the chairman of PRASA for 6 years. He never had a company car. Some people come there, first month that they've got company cars. This chairman never had bodyguards. Some people come there, they have bodyguards. This chairman was never asked by parliament to pay any money back that they've paid to themselves. The person who's making accusations against me has been asked by parliament to pay some money back to the coffers of the state. And those people have got the guts to come in front of the South Africans and talk about corruption. You'll be the judge. And as I'm saying, that I'm one person who will be willing to stand in front of a court. By the way, in 1985, when I appeared before the court, I refused to participate in that court because I didn't recognize it. Now, for the first time, I'll have an opportunity to stand in a democratic South Africa, in the courts that I fought for, in the democracy that I fought for, and answer for myself. So I'm looking forward to that day. I'm not going to be responding to the innuendos who people just come and in front being excited by the cameras and the TVs. Then they start making all types of noises. As I'm saying, in my entire stay, and even the chairs and the board members in front of me, they were never asked to go and pay back the money that they took away from the coffers of the state. If I'm sure National Treasury will respond on the allegations about perhaps the deputy minister having to answer on certain things. But having said all this, Swiss Butelezi at all times will be prepared to cooperate with the law enforcement agencies 24/7, anytime. I will be prepared to present myself to the democratic institutions that we have created by the constitutions that we fought for. Let me deal with the tax increase that you are alluding to. Let's not preempt what we are going to do. I think we have said we are committed to fiscal consolidation. We are committed to expenditure ceiling. That's what we are saying. Then there are a number of things that we can do within that space. Amongst others, is a question of prioritization of certain projects. But as the minister was saying, what we think is sacrosanct is that we don't want to cut on infrastructure spending, because that's a very important input in the growth of the economy. We have done that from 2008 as a counter-cyclical investment. So we would like to ring fence that as much as possible. But there are many variables and permutations that we would like to play around with. But that doesn't mean that the challenge that we are facing, it is a serious challenge. That's why we are busy consulting everybody, and we are saying, let everybody put the shoulder to the wheel. That's why we are talking to business, to labor, to try and get the economy out of this situation. If I may continue, what's different from the planned meeting, for instance, from what happens in the cabinet? As you know, that in the cabinet, there will be so many things that will be discussed, cutting through all the departments of government. But this meeting, which we started yesterday with the president and the ministers referred to by the minister, and the meeting following in 2 weeks' time, is going to solely focus on what we do to get the economy back to the growth path. And it's time unusual now. Things can't just continue. So it's always important. I think that's what strategy says, that when you've got such challenges, you go back and retreat and see what you can do better and do differently. I think I would leave the others to the minister and the DG.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, in relation to the question whether National Treasury has recommended the Deputy Minister to be charged, let me take a long-term, a longer answer in taking you back to the IEC headquarters. If you remember, the public protector, when she came with that report, gave National Treasury certain responsibilities. We performed the responsibilities, and one of the key responsibilities was to ensure that a forensic investigation happens. And in terms of the report that was provided, we then gave it back to the public protector and to the IEC to act. And that was our role. Now let me quickly take you back to the same thing here. In the report titled Derailed, the public protector said all contracts more than 10 million we should conduct a forensic report on. There were 216 of such contracts in PRASA from, I think, 2012 to 2015. Now, we obviously cannot do that ourselves, and we are not doing that ourselves anyway, because we've got a suite of service providers that we use. Many service providers, as you can imagine, the quantum of these reports, of these reports that needed to be performed. 11 such were then allocated to Deloitte and distributed across a whole number of them. There was one such, remember it's contracts and they range from a whole lot of things. I have checked with the Chief Procurement Office because this responsibility would be located there. I was worried that we are charging the Deputy Minister who's 2 doors away from my office, and I wanted to assure myself as soon as I took over this function role to make sure that I understand. And these are the facts that I came about, that at no point in any of these reports, not conducted by us, but by various service providers, including Deloitte, there are a variety of recommendations. But there was one particular report on the ICT tender, and I don't have the full details. I wish I knew that you're going to ask. I would have brought the details here. One of the recommendations in there says the executive authority should be held accountable. And it goes on to say some chief operations officer should be charged, but it's referring to the executive authority. So then that's insofar as where we see, because the chairperson would have been part of the executive authority over PRASA as a board member. So at no point, with information available at this point in time, to me, I can confirm that at no point are we saying the Deputy Minister should be charged. What could be said is what the recommendations are in these 216 contracts that were reviewed, whereby, and we've had deadlines, if you remember, in terms of the derailed and the letter that came from the public protector. We would have taken the reports as is, passed them over to the public protector and to the board of PRASA for them to act. So, as I said, if you think about the election IEC, it's the IEC, it's the minister responsible in that part, where that entity lies, who would have taken part. So we performed our role in terms of what was requested of us to ensure that a forensic audit is taken against all contracts that are worth 10 million and more. And that's what we did. So I think, and we've got stacks and stacks of these reports. They're available. I think, but it's important that, maybe and I've heard, you saying on more than one occasions that the Treasury is saying, and no one came to us to check these facts. But I'm just warning that it's important that we engage, and we are not afraid to engage and ask questions, and we'll respond. That we eventually maybe arrive, so that we don't give a narrative that suggests that, there's something wrong that we do. And I don't want to go into too much detail. But let me quickly say, maybe to answer just as a comment, to say, after taking over this role last week, if you think about it, it's only not even a month. Last week, I raised my hand because I believe in this country, and I believe that as a country we must advance. And as a country we must be responsible in building South Africa together, because we are only 23 years old, if you think about it. And I'm not referring to NCA in this particular in your case, but a whole lot of, there's a narrative out there that suggests that the treasury is not up to it in terms of staff, we are corrupt, we are all of this, all because of there's a tender, by the way, and I know one of you is going to ask this question, about the IFMS. The IFMS, we've acknowledged, we went to Parliament, we responded to questions. I'm raising this because it's important that you understand that there's 1,200 people in the Treasury currently who are not corrupt. There's 1,200 people who are determined and committed to doing what's right. And I think as a new leader in the Treasury, I should then say to you that if I found out that there's anybody who is not in line with what we are all about, in fulfilling our functions that we fulfilled for so long, we will deal with that, including any wrongdoing, including any corruption or perception of corruption that may be there in any of the contracts that we either handle as Treasury. So it's important that we clear that so that we don't create a narrative out there that, you know, there's something wrong with the National Treasury officials, things are going to fall apart and so on. So I think it's important, Minister, I thought, let me put that up front and acknowledge that we have a big challenge ahead. We are here to support the two principles, and we will do that with determination and passion that we've demonstrated over the years. And I'm not alone in this. There's 1,200 people behind in ensuring that we build this country together and do what we have to do. And I'm happy that we've got a very vibrant media in South Africa, and we will engage when necessary to ensure that we actually respond to challenges that are there in building this democracy. And I think for me, that's more key, without any way sweeping anything under the table. I think that's not what I hear the two principals are saying, and that's not what certainly I'm saying on behalf of 1,200 people. And I'm raising this thing in the context of the question that says, get to understand, ask us. If it's IFMS, I didn't get a call from nobody in the media, but there's a view out there that Treasury people are corrupt. If there's any corruption, we'll deal with it. Let's not dampen the spirits of public servants who are committed, like the 1,200 people that I work with or that I've been working with for the past 18 years. So engaging is something that we're all up to, and we're not afraid to engage because we can put out openly things so that we take you along in building this democracy. Thank you.
The allocation of assets to black managers, not just by PIC but other SOCs. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting this morning with black asset managers, and they shared with us all the frustrations that they had. And I think what we'll do, it will be very unfortunate if we're going to say to you now, by such and such a time we would have done that. We have committed that we are going to call the SOCs, to get PIC, and then have a roadmap as to how we are going to correct this thing. It's just not acceptable that with the assets worth about 7 trillion rand, the black asset managers are only having about less than 500 billion rand assets under management. It's just not acceptable, and that must change. And that we are going to make sure that it changes. About track record, those men and women who are working there, some of them have got 20 years working, doing the very same job. That thing is being used to try and keep black people out of the economy. And I hear Minister Gigaba, I hear the cabinet saying that we can't be party to that thing. That industry should transform. And these excuses which are being used that people don't have the capabilities. How can you say somebody has been in the same place for 20 years, you still want to say he doesn't have a capacity? Give him an opportunity and he performs. They went to these universities that you all went to. They've worked for the big asset managers. They've run their companies for more than 10 years. And it's just a lame excuse to say black managers can't manage assets. And we are calling on the SOCs, those under us who are going to tell them, going through all the processes that they must go to, that but it can't be allowed in this time and era that black managers, they continue to be spectators in the economy of their country. When they look at the assets of the workers, the majority of them who are black, we are not going to allow that. So we are very clear on that, and we are going to, they must come with their schedules as to how they are going to correct that position. Minister, I think I should deal with this. You know, there was a time when the PRASA thing was a Lucky Montana narrative. Popom Leaf, whenever he appeared in front of TVs, it was Lucky Montana, which was wrong because he targeted him and we knew exactly why he was targeting him. After that, Lucky Montana has fallen out of fashion. It's Fiso Butelis. Who's the next? I don't know. Is it a coincidence that I'm here at National Treasury and then I'm the fashion to Popom Leaf? I don't know. I'm doing the work as I'm telling you that I've served South Africans for the entire of my adult life. So I'm not going, my persona is not going to be challenged by a person who has been asked by Parliament to pay back money. So I'm very clear on that. I've been called West before. When I was sentenced under terrorism. I was called a terrorist, just like Mandela was called a terrorist, and now he's a darling of everybody. I've been called West names, but people should prove those things. They shouldn't come here and start making all types of allegations against us. We are not distracted. We are very focused. Transformation is going to happen in this country, and as long as we are here, we'll continue doing that.
Thank you. Yes, you know, Warren, we are very concerned about the state of state-owned companies, particularly their financial position, as well as the contingent liabilities. To refer to the three that you have mentioned, I mean, in the first instance, Cabinet, one of the things that we are bringing to that meeting to discuss is there are certain proposals we are making with regard to state-owned companies. One of those proposals, without undermining the collective, is that wherever there are vacancies, we should adopt a principle that those vacancies must be filled within a specified time frame, so that you don't have a situation in which you have an unless there is a dispute, a court case, CCMA, labor court, something like that. But where there is no dispute, such as an SAA, it's been more than 2 years now that there's a vacancy of CEO. The CFO's vacancy had taken very long itself. Our view is that Eskom should act speedily. The Minister of Public Enterprises should act speedily to strengthen the board and appoint a well-capable CE for the company as quickly as possible, given the importance of Eskom in the economy and the large contingent liabilities they still have at their disposal. The advantage, though, with Eskom is that of the 350 government guarantee framework they have, they've only utilized 200 billion. So they still have about 150 billion available to them. And because of the difficult economic environment, the demand for electricity has been lower, at the same time as Eskom has been able to improve its efficiencies, maintain many of its power stations. Many of the power stations are now performing. Some of the units of Medupi, Kusile, as well as Ingula have begun kicking in, adding to the capacity that we have. And that means now that Eskom has got surplus electricity, which they are even exporting to our neighboring countries, thereby generating revenue which assists to strengthen their balance sheet. So if we address the governance issues at Eskom, in actual fact, it would seem that those governance issues are the major thing insofar as Eskom is concerned. If we address them, and build confidence with regard to executive directors and the non-executive directors, ESCOM would fall off the list of major concerns. It would become normal again, and would even be in a position to begin to scale down their guarantees. We are looking forward to that taking place, and we hope that correct decisions will be taken in that regard. South African Airways, at the budget of 2017, we made an announcement that we are going to look at ways to recapitalize South African Airways. You will remember that we had raised this many times, that SAA, when it was hived off Transnet, was not properly capitalized. And that has had a massive impact on their balance sheet. But what South Africans want is that the decision to strengthen the balance sheet of SAA must be linked fundamentally to the organization returning to proper governance. Returning to proper governance and demonstrating that it is going to turn around and will now implement the turnaround strategy rather than abdicate from that. So the new CEO is going to be very crucial in driving that turnaround strategy and ensuring that the pillars of the turnaround strategy, which include the route network strategy, which include the purchase of critical supplies that will help the airline both to avoid unnecessary financial losses or avoidable financial losses, and at the same time to begin generating revenue to regain the confidence of its clients, of its patrons, and fill up passenger seats. And all of those elements, including measures that the airline must take, the further to cut cost, so that we return the airline to financial viability. It's possible, it can be done. If you look at Ethiopian Airways, if you look at Kenyan Airways, it's possible, it can be done. South African Airways has an advantage of a country which is a regional hub. It has an advantage of passengers, of patrons who can afford to fly. It needs to re-earn the confidence of those patrons and establish a product offering that is going to regain those patrons. So whatever assistance we give them is certainly not going to come easy and free. We're going to be hard with SAA. And the turnaround is not going to happen quickly. Therefore, the conditions that we are going to set for them are going to be tough. They will need to demonstrate that they are prepared themselves to regain the confidence of the public. And so, at the medium-term budget policy statement, I will make an announcement in this regard. The same applies to SABC. Well, not necessarily the same, but we are in discussions with the Minister of Communications with regard to SABC. And I think that at the right time, I think she will make a statement with regard to the measures, or we will both make a statement with regard to the measures we are taking to address difficulties at SABC. And obviously one of those measures is to strengthen the board, make sure that the board is more stable. The board of SABC must shield itself and must be shielded from unnecessary, undue public pressure, so that they focus not on the politics of the country, or the politics of political organizations, but focus on the business of running the SABC profitably and commercially. That is the biggest responsibility they have. And with regard to the vacancies of executive directors which they have, they need to fill them up. They need to fill them up as speedily as possible in order to re-establish confidence in the public broadcaster. As I say, Eskom will have to, the difficulty that the electricity regulator faces is that Eskom doesn't have cost-reflective tariffs. But it could be that they are not yet in a position to arrive at that. And so decisions will have to be made which do not jeopardize the economy and the interests of the consumers. So if there are difficulties insofar as the tariff that will be provided Eskom, we cannot prejudge that. But if and when it happens, we will look at it. But I think there is still space within the guarantee framework of Eskom for them to maneuver a little bit. But they too need to return the company to greater efficiency, stabilize the governance, and pay attention to managing the finances of the company. The question, Paul, in Cape Town about the Twin Peaks legislation, look, as soon as it is passed, we are going to work on the regulations. Now, you can't develop the regulations before the legislation is passed because you can't preempt what will be in the legislation. So once that is done, we will work on the regulations. Of course, there is thinking which has been taking place. We are going to try and move speedily. I think when we emerge out of the meeting in 2 weeks' time, we will be in a better position to outline very concrete timelines. Because as I say, what we will be doing in 2 weeks' time is to emerge with an action plan. And that action plan will have timelines. So we will outline all of that when we come out of that meeting for implementation, the enaction of the legislation, as well as I agree with you that the Twin Peaks legislation is going to build confidence with regard to the matters it has to deal with, especially in the financial sector. The final question, Toli, let me say to you, my brother, that we must try to the best of our ability to avoid being information peddlers. I would have been much happier if you had studied a little bit the issues that you are bringing up so that you are able to argue them out properly. Remember that at one stage I was accused of having an offshore account. That accusation still hangs in the air. And I'm being asked to prove if I have it or not. But the person who made the allegation hasn't been asked to provide prima facie evidence. There was an allegation that in Cape Town I live in a house that was bought for me, not a government house. And some of your colleagues in the media ran with the story without calling Public Works to ask. It's a simple thing. Call Public Works, ask. You would have found your information. And instead of peddling wrong information, you would have written a correct story that the person making the allegation is lying. A story is made that I'm not South African. Some of your colleagues run with the story. You don't check. You don't check whether this is true or not. You allow yourselves to partake in insulting my family, insulting my integrity, insulting my identity. And an allegation is made that my father wasn't South African. May his soul rest in peace. But you run with the story, you don't even dare to check. It could be, as with regards to all the other stories that are being run, and the Director General of Home Affairs can explain to you. The Minister of Home Affairs, on an annual basis, deals with not one application for a waiver, but with many. You deal with many decisions, not only waivers. Some of them you approve, some you reject. And because you are the minister, you don't have capacity in your office to assess and evaluate documentation from people applying for whatever forms of documents. So let me just take you through this issue that the naturalization. These people applied for naturalization in 2008 when someone else was minister of, or they obtained their permanent residence in 2008 when someone else was Minister of Home Affairs. They obtained their, some of them obtained their naturalization in 2013 when someone else was Minister of Home Affairs. In both instances, it wasn't me. Then the issue is raised that a number of arguments are raised, including that they are highly invested. Secondly, that you grant permanent residence to a father but not the wife. And they ask you to regularize that and correct it. So the application is made. By law, it's directed, because it's an appeal. Law says the appeal is made to the minister to overturn the decision of the Director General. But in practice, the minister refers, once an appeal is made to you, as the minister, you refer it to the DG, and the DG refers it further backward to the staff in the department, to then look at this and assess whether there are grounds, valid grounds for the appeal. And they make those assessments because they've got the capacity. They can go back to the documents submitted in 2008, go back to the first time that an individual arrived in the country. On the basis of that, they then look at whether the appeal is justified or not. And here, the issue was a technical appeal. It's not that you granted citizenship to somebody who had not qualified. The issue was, no, you can submit your application later. But there was a fact that the husband already had naturalization, and therefore the wife, you needed to regularize that. So they look at all the facts, and I'm sure the DG of Home Affairs can explain this to you. And having done all of that, they then say, Minister, we recommend that we actually overturn my decision, because it comes to you when the DG has signed. Basically saying, overturn my decision because new facts have come to light. We've reconsidered the matters. That's the whole principle of appeal. It's the same in government as it is in the courts. When you overturn an appeal, you are not indicting the previous judge. You are saying, on the basis of new facts, a new decision must be taken, and in this instance it came from the same department which had made the determination. The Director General of Home Affairs will also indicate some of the inconsistencies in the letters that have been peddled in the media. But you could have paid a bit of attention to asking questions about that than hurrying to me to ask me to answer to allegations that you did not care to ask the person who made them to prove. Because the target here is not the person making the allegation. The target is the person against whom the allegation is made. Completely to tarnish my name. Completely to defocus me from the work I have to do. I hope you are not part of that agenda. My family has not been spared. My wife has been ravished. My father is being ravished in his death. It cannot be right. It just simply cannot be right. And I'm sure that when the public protector looks at all of these issues, now that the matters are at the hands of the public protector, let us trust that she will do a thorough job so that we can get to the bottom of the matter, so that when we talk about the urgent issues of the economy, we don't get diverted to allegations that have not been proved, where anybody can jump around making an allegation. It would seem to me, you say, it would appear that the Guptas have benefited. It would seem to me that in my exercise of my duties as Minister of Home Affairs, I actually made many decisions. There was an instance when a professor in the technology faculty at UJ was being asked by the department to return to the country of origin to apply for a change of his visa, because the regulations say if you change your visa condition, you need to go back to the country of origin. The vice chancellor at UJ appealed to me that, but Minister, if that happens, he is going to be gone for long, and because we don't know how long the process will take, the students will be affected. Can you please grant him a waiver? And we did. There was a teacher in Limpopo teaching critical skills, critical subjects. The Department of Home Affairs said we can't grant you permanent residence because you are not employed full-time. And the Department of Basic Education in Limpopo said we can't employ you full-time because you don't have permanent residence. Now the guy is here stuck between the two departments. My decision was, DG of Home Affairs, call the head of Department of Basic Education in Limpopo, resolve this issue to grant this teacher permanent residence so that they can teach. Because if they were to leave the country, it's South African children that are going to be affected. You haven't bothered to ask how many other such decisions have been made by you in the conduct of your duty, by your predecessors and by your successors. You will be surprised to know that there are many such decisions. And I'm sure that the Department of Home Affairs will give you relevant information. I think what we need to do now is to allow the public protector to do the work that she has to do. She will be furnished with all the support she needs and documentation she needs, so that I know that the campaign against us will continue. It's a campaign. It started at the very appointment on the 30th of March. It's a campaign. There are people paid to run this campaign, and they will run this campaign whatever the facts. The issue is not the facts. The truth just stand in the way, inconveniently stand in the way of a good story. So we will remain focused on our work. We will not be dissuaded from implementing our work and focusing on transformation. And we will carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. That's it. Thanks.
Jackson is calling me.
Yes, I just want to not there. And that's why Jackson is calling. Where are you supposed to be? Parliament. Oh. Shit, and it's too late now. No, we said we're supposed to. Exactly. No, including you, including this man.